I am leading off the session today in a more anecdotal form to talk to you about healthy materials and experience from the perspective of a designer and project coordinator. I'll then lead into more of the fact or data-based part of that session, which Chris will deliver. A university professor in Costa Rica who works with animal behavior and his specialty in birds was studying the use of natural versus synthetic materials in nest building, and essentially found that there is a prevalence for choosing garbage or synthetic materials for nest building in concentrated locations such as urban environments. Birds will in fact use whatever nest materials they can find. And in doing so, he found that there was individuality in selecting those materials. So even though the prevalence of garbage may have been consistent, each individual chose the nesting materials differently from one bird to the next. Given that, it was hard to ascertain whether it was specifically because garbage was available versus the individual nature of those birds' behavior. However, what is obvious is if we don't provide garbage, we won't build with garbage. Shocking concept. So thinking about how that ties into what we do, I wanted to consider, what about our nests? What I see as a professional designer and project coordinator in the projects that I'm working on is that everyone interprets sustainable, green, natural, healthy in a different way. And that individualized meaning ultimately expresses itself differently in the materials that someone chooses to build their home with. People want to choose natural, healthy, sustainable materials, but for whatever reason, there are very real or perceived challenges or barriers to doing so. If we don't offer garbage or unhealthy materials, our clients are less likely to choose them. I'll use that word less because it's still not guaranteed. And as we'll tie into Chris's part of the section, the presentation, we can provide measurable data and performance standards to help people in choosing those materials. From my perspective, I function both as designer and project coordinator at Evolve, and I design some of our projects, which are often our straw bale buildings or our renovations. And I am project coordinator for some of our projects, which means I liaise between Evolve, the client, and the project manager and site staff that are implementing or building the homes. What I see, of course, is a highly individualized selection of materials. So not only do we build custom homes, so each home is quite different, it's quite individualized, but it's also really difficult to reconcile the wants and needs within that one project. So I often work with couples. One couple has a focus on healthy materials, one couple has a focus on water conservation. One is highly focused on cost efficiency, the other is highly focused on quality. So all of these competing views make it very challenging to reconcile that product selection within a project, but also makes it really difficult to help us choose a baseline standard for projects. So what we're trying to do is develop a minimum standard that we are willing to offer our clients and work with. So we will not offer MDF, for instance, but that doesn't mean that our clients won't ultimately choose MDF. We're not necessarily prohibiting that. So it makes it very challenging when there's individuals that want to choose something very different from one another within a project. Within each project is different from another. So it makes it challenging to choose a baseline standard of materials that will essentially satisfy all. Selecting healthy materials essentially comes down to two key components. That's people. How does it affect the material impact on human health, indoor air quality, EMFs, water quality, radon, noise, sound, light, and temperature? and planet. How is it affecting the broader local, national, international community? Are there over-extractions, mining use, embodied energy production, delivery service, community, displacement of residents, etc. So at the beginning of each one of our projects, whether it's designed by myself or we are taking over a project that's being designed by others, homeowner or another architect, we issue a design questionnaire that has a series of questions designed to help us understand our clients better before we undergo the design process or continue on the build process. One of the questions I ask is, what does the word sustainable mean to you? So of course, there are a wide number of answers that come through, such as resiliency, reuse of existing materials, using materials that can be responsibly created, cultivated throughout their life cycle, will not have a negative impact on the environment. Cradle-to-cradle considerations, and Chris may talk a little bit to that. Durable, passive heating and cooling, and products that are respectful of the environment and creatures, including human health. One of our clients answered that they did not want to impose their version of sustainability on the creatures and the environment that was going to share their space. There's a real wide range of interpretation of the definition of sustainability, and that ultimately affects what our clients are choosing to put in their homes. Part of the questionnaire also addresses describing 3 adjectives that you want your home to embody at the end of the project. And often those answers are things like efficient or comfortable. That comfort or energy efficiency definition is also quite varied. I get into further detail in our questionnaire, trying to extract information about, well, what does comfortable mean to you? What's the temperature of the home? How do you feel in it? How much light is there in it? Trying to draw out of the client what it is they want so I can tell them what they want. So part of the questionnaire is a product material selection or construction priority sequence. Part of the question is rank these items in order of priority. And this is a survey from the last 16 design questionnaires that we've issued. And the top priority is healthy indoor air quality. The definition of what that means to our clients then has to be extracted by myself to try and find out, well, what exactly are you trying to achieve by saying healthy indoor air quality is your top priority. General energy efficiencies and natural building materials come second. So you can see the sort of the topic that we're all here for this weekend is being reflected in what we're seeing from our clients. They're looking for these very specific materials, energy efficiencies to be in their homes. However, it isn't necessarily what they ultimately choose. Water conservation is always falling last. It's the last thing on people's mind. For myself, water conservation and water quality is probably top. As we've said, you can't live without water. So it's interesting to see that it is the least priority option out of all the other options I've given people to choose from. In this particular instance, I don't give them an other. Some other questions I do. There's a subsequent questions that try to draw out what it is that they're looking for from healthy indoor air quality, or what types of natural materials.
Why water is not important? Like, I'm just curious.
No, I haven't actually received an answer as to why water is not important. It's interesting that the folks who have chosen water conservation as their high priority tend to be in that field. So they're already involved in water conservation in some capacity, so that boosts their priority. So as I mentioned, there are various reasons for why people choose not to use healthy materials, and those tend to be very real or perceived challenges. Those tend to fall into one of these 4 categories: upfront costs, ongoing maintenance, and that includes ongoing costs, aesthetics, and extreme circumstances such as chemical sensitivities, opposition to fossil fuels, accessibility, barrier-free. So in terms of cost challenges, it boils down to 2 things. Either our clients can't spend the money, they don't have the budget, or they don't want to spend the money. They don't see the value in what they're getting. And we find that often is the case in things that get buried in the insulation in the walls. I'm not going to see it. I want to see nice things in my home. So they can't see the value of what they're spending their money on. So for one of our clients who did have a low budget, rather than opt for a full custom home, they opted for one of our straw bale portables turned into a residential home. They didn't have a lot of money to spend on the interior finishes, but they did what they could. So they got IKEA boxes but used real wood fronts for their cabinetry, cork flooring for their floor, and recycled content tile for their bathroom. For another of our clients, budget also a very real challenge, but again, this is where some of the other competing elements came into play. They also had an opposition to fossil fuels, they had electromagnetic frequency issues, chemical sensitivities. They elected to install pure bond ceiling. From a perceived cost perspective, it actually didn't work out from a cost perspective for Evolve. It was actually quite expensive, much more expensive than we had anticipated to install. But they are happy with the outcome, which translated further into other selection choices in the home, such as using the pure bond for closet doors instead of using the leftover panels. One of the competing views, of course, was that it was a slab on grade, so they had for all intents and purposes, a finished concrete floor ready to be used, but they did not want to be standing on a concrete floor. They felt that it was too harsh, it was too hard on the body, and so they wanted to put flooring over top. So here we are. Well, yes, they chose a natural flooring product, it's still layering another product on top of a potentially already finished product. And we do have clients who are able to spend a bit more money on budget and upgrade to items like reclaimed ash flooring from local barns, as well as reclaimed barn board. The other key factor for not choosing healthy materials is maintenance, whether it's ongoing maintenance, immediate maintenance. Lifestyle tends to dictate this decision. So if people are very actively engaged, passively engaged, we talked a little bit about that yesterday in the opening of windows and wanting to be engaged with their mechanical systems. But there are some very real maintenance challenges to some natural products. So when someone hears that with silicate paint, for instance, that it's not necessarily scrubbable the same way that latex is, it presents a real maintenance challenge for them. And they're like, no, hands up, I don't want to spend the time scrubbing my walls, repainting my walls, I just want to wipe it down at the end of the day. So there's various reasons why someone may not choose that particular paint, for instance, because of the maintenance. Siding tends to be another product where there can be a lot of maintenance. So this is Tsugi ban. It does require some maintenance. It does require oiling. It can weather in a way that also feeds into the next barrier, that's aesthetics. So people don't like the look of the way a natural product wears over time. This client had a beautiful log home, which of course we might think this is amazing, it's beautiful log, it's natural, but for them the maintenance and upkeep of it was way too challenging. It had no insulation, it was freezing. The whole home was wood, which they found very challenging to upkeep, and so they elected to, along with a redesign of the layout, elected to move to a drywall finish that made it easier for them to maintain. They still incorporated some natural materials. We kept the beams, we incorporated a masonry heater, but the challenge of one type of design or aesthetic not being suitable for that particular lifestyle. Aesthetics, of course, really highly charged topic. Lots of strong opinions, even when I joke that I'm part designer, part project coordinator, part marriage counselor. It takes a lot of effort sometimes to reconcile views between different clients and between clients within one project. And often for someone who's strongly focused on aesthetics, function is basically going to follow form. So we've had several instances where we've provided a concrete slab and densifier as a low cost, easily maintainable finish, but it's not the right aesthetic. It's not what people imagine a densified floor will look like. And actually, if we go back to maintenance, that sort of stripe on the side is densified concrete. Yeah, so densified concrete, densifier is essentially silicate. So unlike a sealer, an epoxy sealer, which is layering a layer over top of the concrete, this is a silicate that fills the pores of the concrete and makes it just that, more dense. So it makes it more durable and less permeable to staining. It does have the effect of picking up anything that you have left lying around on the floor during construction. So if you leave a 2x4, you're probably going to see that come out in the final finished product after the concrete's cured. Yeah, well, there's different types that get applied at different stages, whether it's immediately after concrete has poured or after it's cured. Yeah. And it's really easy to install as well, factoring into sort of this maintenance topic. But the aesthetic of it, when people picture concrete floor, they picture something that's polished, that's even, that has an even aggregate exposure, and it's not the look they're going for, even though it satisfies those other. So for this particular client who had a log home, they were installing an addition on the back. They might have otherwise chosen different materials for the addition. They might have chosen a metal roof rather than asphalt, but it was an existing home that they were trying to match and mimic. So that is exactly what we did. We built the addition and replicated those materials. Aesthetics, again, as I mentioned, can be very individualized. And so there's lots of things in our natural building repertoire that not everybody finds appealing. So while I think most of us would look at some of these and think that's really cool, there's a lot of folks that are drawn away from the more extreme aesthetics, such as unique windowsill ledges, plaster relief, earth and masonry stoves, very bold colors, and very bold, unique patterning on different materials that some people just shy away from. They like builder beige. So there's 5 key areas for material solution that we look for. That's in the production, so recycled content, that could be in paint, tile, sustainably harvested. We often use Nudura hardwoods. Some of our clients have expressed that they want to have healthy indoor air quality natural materials, but when it came down to it, they did not like the aesthetic that Nudura was offering, and so they ended up with a different product that I can't verify has the same environmental credentials that our known suppliers provide us. Minimal processing, low emissions. And then we get into packaging, such as the content. How is the packaging content? So if we are looking at a latex paint like Sherwin-Williams, they do 0 VOCs with tinting. They flat pack and flat ship all of their product. So it's not a natural product, but it's starting to address some of these considerations. Installation and use, resource and recovery, is it reusable and recyclable? And community, social, ethical, and economic benefits. And really the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So Evolve has trialed lots of different products over the years. We've developed standards on what we are willing to offer as a minimum. And so in each one of our contracts, that is what we offer as a minimum. But as I mentioned before, we're not yet saying you can't choose something. And so that still opens the door to allow our clients to choose products that aren't healthy and aren't natural. So moving in the direction of enforceable product standards is a good way to ensure that clients are choosing products that we feel comfortable working with. We have a catalog of those standards, and we've built that catalog based on what a lot of our clients have asked for over the years and that we've tested and feel comfortable with. We do, as I mentioned, offer downgrades or upgrades, but our preference would be to be able to offer something that is suitable for all. So I presented more of an anecdotal story of what I see from my practice, and what people are choosing, why they're choosing it, what they face as a barrier to choosing those materials. And Chris will take it to the next level. So how do we narrow the field on choosing the wide range of materials that are out there, and how do we determine if those materials are in fact healthy? What are the what are the measurable standards by which we can assess whether they're healthy, and be able to offer those to our clients. Things as basic as MSDS sheets, or as complex as Passive House certification and or Living Building Challenge, on sort of two extremes.